Hello, I'm Dr. Terry Susan Fine, Content Specialist for the Florida Joint Center for Citizenship, which is part of the School of Politics, Security, and International Affairs at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. Welcome to our Middle School Civics Highlights series. Today we look at benchmark CG.3.1, analyze the advantages of the United States Constitutional Republic over other forms of government in safeguarding liberty, freedom, and a representative government. In Part 1, we focus on various forms of government, their political philosophies, and their organizational structures. We will be focusing our attention on benchmark clarifications 1 and 2. In benchmark clarification 1, students will apply their understanding of various forms of government, while in benchmark clarification 2, students will identify different forms of government based on their political philosophy or organizational structure. We will ask such questions as, what are various forms of government such as republic, democracy, monarchy, oligarchy, theocracy, and autocracy? We also ask, what are various forms of government based on their political philosophy or organizational structure? We now focus our attention on various forms of democracy by defining republic, democracy, and monarchy. In a republic, we focus on the people electing representatives to make the laws on their behalf. In fact, you'll also notice that another term for republic is representative democracy. So if we understand democracy to be ruled by the people, in a republic or a representative democracy, the people rule themselves based on the people that they choose to represent them in the governing process. This approach to governing is practiced in the United States. In a direct democracy, the citizens themselves make the laws and decide what actions the government will take. This approach to democracy was practiced in ancient Athens, although there are pockets across the United States and in other countries where the people experience direct democracy in a limited way. So, for example, in the state of Florida, to amend the state constitution, the people vote directly on whether or not the state constitution will be amended. And as long as a minimum percentage of votes is secured, then the Constitution is amended, even if a majority of the legislature might oppose it. That's direct democracy. In a monarchy, the government is run by a king or queen who has the power by being born into the ruling family. This approach to governing is practiced in Saudi Arabia. This means that persons outside the ruling family, no matter how much knowledge that they have or interest that they have in ruling, are going to be unable to rule because they were not born into that family. Similarly, if a member of the ruling family may not be doing a good job or may not be interested in having that job, it doesn't mean that they're not entitled to the job because they were born into that ruling family. We also look at oligarchy, theocracy, and autocracy. An oligarchy is a situation where the government is run by just a few people or a small group. This approach to governing was practiced in ancient Sparta. A theocracy is a government that is run by a church or a religious institution. This approach to governing is practiced in modern-day Iran. In an autocracy, the government is completely controlled by one person who can rule in any way that he or she wants. This approach to governing is practiced in modern-day Russia. And so we see important differences across these various forms of government. So, for example, in an oligarchy, when we're talking about government being run by just a few people, those people are most likely to be the elites in that society, for example, the wealthiest members of the society. A theocracy means that the government is run by people who are already leaders in another aspect of society, and that is the religion of the society. Whereas in an autocracy, that's an individual who rules without having to answer to anybody. Now, there are many different forms of government around the world. There are governments that are more representative of the people, such as in the United States. There are some governments that are ruled by a church or other religious institution, while still other governments are controlled by just a few wealthy people. And as we learned, there are even governments that are ruled by just one person. So as you can imagine, there is a wide array of governing structures, which means there's going to be a wide array of viewpoints and political philosophies as to the strengths and weaknesses of these different types of governing structures. We're now going to be describing the specific structures of various forms of government. Looking at a direct democracy, that occurs when the power to govern is in the hands of the people rather than elected representatives. This means that each person is equal in the governing process. Persons who may know nothing about a particular policy, or other persons who may know a great deal about a particular philosophy or particular policy, have the same power, the same amount of power when it comes to governing. In a representative democracy, also known as a republic, the country is governed by representatives who are elected by the adult citizens, and the power of the government is then limited by a constitution. So as we discussed earlier, when representatives have the power, and that power to represent and to pass laws and make other governing decisions is made by the people in choosing who those people will be. This means that the people who engage in that process, the people who vote, the people who actively interact with government, they're going to have more of an impact and an influence on the decisions made by those representatives than those individuals who don't vote or who don't otherwise participate in the political process. In a monarchy, the power is held by one person who was born into the ruling family. Monarchs may rule for life, and monarchs follow a nation's constitution if that monarchy follows a constitutional monarchy approach. This means that even though there may be one person who rules, there are limitations as to what that one person can do with their power. And this is an important principle as well, because this means that the monarch, even though their only qualification is being born into a particular family, this monarch must understand what their powers and responsibilities are under their nation's constitution, that they don't have absolute power even if they may be the one person who holds power within the monarchy. Next, we're going to look at the structure of an oligarchy, autocracy, and theocracy. In an oligarchy, a country is ruled by a small group of wealthy people. So here we see that people who have wealth, meaning they have economic power, are also given political power. They have the power of governance. And this then means that the people who have economic power play a role in determining how the economy is shaped based on the policies that they pass, the policies and practices that they support, as well as those that they don't support. In an autocracy, This is a form of government where one leader has unlimited power. And examples of autocracies include dictatorships, including, for example, a military dictator, and absolute monarchies. These are monarchies where the king or queen, who has all the power, has that power because there is no constitution to limit their power. And then finally, in a theocracy, this is a form of government in which religious leaders rule in the name of one or more deities. Deity is another name for God. This means that in a theocracy, this is a form of government in which religious leaders rule based on their one God or many gods. And this leader serves through what is called divine right, meaning that God or many gods gave this person or these people the power that they have to govern outside of the religious institutions, but also within political and governing institutions. Thank you for joining me today for Middle School Civics Highlights. Do you still have questions? I imagine you do. If so, please contact us using the information that appears on the screen. Till next time, I'm Dr. Terry Susan Fine. Thank you for joining me.